Thanks, Justin and organizers. Today I'm going to talk about coding chatbots in Node.js. So show of hands, how many people here built a chatbot before? I can't see very well, but I do see a few hands in front. Anybody is planning to build a chatbot? Okay, a few. Okay, so these are my lessons learned while I was trying to build a chatbot. And hi, my name is KahWee, and I'm a JavaScript developer for the past 5 years. And I work for Tremor Video San Francisco, which is a video advertising company. And I work on Node.js tools to recompile animate CC outputs into JavaScript interactive advertisements. And I also am responsible for the WeBuildSG chatbot. So you could try it. You could try talking to WeBuildSG and just ask something like, what are the upcoming events? And that's how I got started into chatbots. And I got started when Facebook just released the Facebook messaging API, and Sayani, who worked on WeBuildSG, shared with me her interest in trying to build a chatbot for WeBuild. And that's how I got started. I wanted to explore Facebook messaging, and she had conveniently got a really good API, which if you haven't already checked out, you should. It's a local community event finder, and that Chion also mentioned yesterday. So I also like sushi. Yay. Yay for sushi. So what is a chatbot? So a chatbot is designed to perform tasks via a chat user interface that typically is text-enabled. An example of text-enabled chatbot would be Facebook Messenger and Slack. There are some voice-enabled ones, such as Cortana and Amazon Echo. But to me, I see them as personal assistants that perform 1 or 2 tasks incredibly well under the given constraints. So why then should you build a chatbot? It reduces the proximity between customers and businesses. These days, we are noticing a trend that businesses are trying to get as close as possible using technology. An example of this would be that Kayak is using the Apple Watch, a device that is on your wrist, to surface out trip information. And you can also ask Alexa to order an Uber now, and you can say something like, Alexa, ask Uber to request an UberX to Amazon Echo, and it does this task that is under these constraints really, really well. And of course, you can also order a pizza. You can order Domino's pizza with Facebook Messenger, and So today, businesses are competing on customer attention span over other businesses. So ComScore found out that the average Americans devote half their app time to a single app. And on a separate study, you have, in a separate study by Business Intelligence, you have messaging apps surpassing social networks in terms of active users. And chatbots works as customers are already in the messaging applications themselves. So for you guys a lot of you guys might be using something like Facebook Messenger, or you're using Kik, you already have the app on, and now it's encroaching into your personal space, which is not so good, but also good for businesses. Chatbots are yet another way to get to your customers. So today we are going to talk about 3 things, and instead of me telling you how to code a Facebook Messenger app or Kik Messenger or using Skype, I'm going to tell you my experience in going through coding a chatbot. And number 1, I'm going to tell you how's it like understanding the receiving messaging from the chat services, meaning how to integrate with chat services. And then also talking about how every chat services have a slightly differing API, so how to exploit it and how to learn more about it. Second is to comprehend the user's input. You need to figure out what the user is what the intention is. And number 3 is responding to the user. So first is to figure out the integration part. Your go-to thing is to read the documentation, which tend to be a bit confusing sometimes. What I did is to start by using request bean. So if you go to this URL, that's how I learned how to start doing Slack's outgoing webhook. And you can see that in Slack, you have this thing where you can fill in an URL. If you go to request bean, you just click, you generate a new session. You will be able to fill it in. And if you do a chat like JSConf.Asia is really cool, which we all know is true, you'll be able to see that what request bean actually get from Slack. And in this case, you'll be able to build your app this way, bit by bit, because now you understand what are the inputs and what is the potential output that you have to do. And most of the documentation, they stress a lot on what is what you should send to the server. It doesn't stress enough what you're receiving from the server, so you don't get to see what exactly is the server sending to you. And this is a great way. And the next example is Facebook Messenger's webhook. Same, you can get to the callback URL, and you can see that, again, I fill in the request bean, and it will initiate a subscription. And in this case, you see that there's a hub challenge, and then there's a hub mode, and that's how you learn the API. And when you do a send on hello, how are you doing today, you see that right at the bottom, it's a little small, but you can see that you get the JSON payload that gets sent back. And if you format it nicely, you'll see you get the sender, you get the recipient, the timestamp, and also the text, of course. So next, I'm going to show you how do you do local development with using localtunnel and nodemon. And so localtunnel is, it lets you test and develop things locally, and it exposes your IP address. Actually, it does a reverse proxy kind of thing, and it allows Facebook to be able to reach you through a public IP address. And in this case, you also can use nodemon, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but it just restarts each time you change. And we're going to do a live demo, which I'm very nervous about. So here goes nothing. And so, I already installed this local tunnel. So I have my app running. So I'm going to close and I rerun my app. And so this is actually the webhook that is going to be that connecting. Let me get my orientation right. A little confused with this. So in this case, if you want to follow, you can download this demo that I will give the link to later. And then I will use localtunnel to expose this at port 8955. I'm going to copy this URL. Make sure it works. So this is already an external URL that Facebook can reach. It's already got HTTPS, and it will hit my local computer. In this case, you go to your webhook subscription. If you're familiar with Facebook, that's how you can change the URL here. And you change the URL right here to this new one. And my verified token is 2016. To verify and save. And so after which you can go here and you can say, hi. And you should be able to get debug information that is here. So you can also do things like hello. And I wrote this tool called Ranka so that it can show you things like your typing, and then you can send GIFs as well. So for more information, you can check out the source code that I have. So what I'm showing you is how you can do debugging. And then the next is to comprehend the user's input. And let's start by imagining that we're going to have a doctor's application where you do like a book an appointment tomorrow at 4 p.m. And using this example, you first have to discover what the intent is. In our app, we are going to have two main functions. One is going to be get appointments, and the other one being book appointments, where it accepts a date and time. So how you figure out get appointment, how do you figure out book an appointment as an intention? And the simplest way is really just to use regex, right? So incredibly naive, but works really well. So you could try book an appointment tomorrow at 4 p.m. That works. That's the regex. But what if you want to do like book appointment and you need to change your regex to be more flexible? And what if people want book me an appointment? That's fine too. This regex work. And what about people wanting reserve my appointment? You can keep adding regexes, and through this, you are determining the intention of the user. So I'm just going to skip through this, and you can, so now that you determine the intention of the user, which is book an appointment tomorrow at 4 p.m., you know that we need to use book appointment with a date and a time. And so now it's really about extracting out tomorrow at 4 p.m. So how do we get the parameter tomorrow at 4 p.m.? And regex isn't very straightforward anymore because people can say something like book an appointment next Saturday at 3 p.m. and things get really complicated. So there's a package for that, and you can use simple NLP tools. Okay, and there's this component of NLP, if you guys are familiar with it, it's called the parts of speech tagger. And some people use Python, and there is this really good library called NLTK in Python. But in Node.js, there is a few libraries like Natural, and one of the easier to use one I found was an NLP compromise, which itself is a compromise because it doesn't give the full set of NLP tools for you to, it's kind of like good enough is good enough thing. And a parts of speech tagger is a piece of software that reads the text and assigns parts of speech to each word and other tokens based on both its definition, its context, that is, its relationship with adjacent and related words in a phrase, sentence, or paragraph. So it sounds a little complicated, so I'm going to break it down for you in like preschool English. And we shall start with a phrase like, I have a pen. And I have a pen, it's a really popular song, and you can pass I have a pen with NLP compromise. And this is how you do it. You can you have to require the NLP compromise package. I made a mistake there. It's actually NLP underscore compromise. Get a sentence, and you can pass through the terms, and you can log out to see what kind of term it is. And the first you get I. I is a pronoun, so that's not what we want. You get have, which is an infinitive verb, and you get which is an article, or rather a determiner, and also a pen. So in this case, you get to see like the first one is a pronoun, the second one is a verb, then an article, then a noun. So you kind of get the gist of it. And what if we want to push it even more, and we want to get things like an emoji? And we have a library for that too, and it's all in NPM. And so again, I have an apple. And an apple is not something that is supported by NLP compromise. So you get a little question mark. And so when it couldn't find anything that seems to be representable in its little database, it will assign a question mark because it doesn't know what to do. So we passed it on to an emoji tagger instead. And there is a library called Gamoji. I think it might be GitHub emoji, not really sure. So what it does is it passes the Unicode characters. If you pass in an apple, it tells you the description being a red apple, right? And then you can then do complex things like detecting what exactly the emoji means. And so I'm going to do live demo again. Probably bad idea. So if you type "I have a pen" in here, it's going to give you "you have a pen." So that's right. And what about an emoji? So I say I have an apple, and it tells me that you have a red apple. So there are a few things to notice here. Firstly, it knows that it is a red apple and it's not an red apple, because the NLP compromise is able to detect what sort of article should precede a noun. And if you try things like, if you make mistakes, like you decide to choose "I have a cow," it's able to fix it for you by saying that you have an ox, because that's the ox emoji. And so you can do a lot of things by this, because you're reading the user input and determining what the user is trying to tell you, including things like emoji. And there's a lot of parsing involved, but it works. Okay. So now for the real thing, right? So initial parsing, we do an initial pass with NLP compromise, and we pass "book an appointment tomorrow at 4 p.m. And this is how it's going to be like. It's going to tell you book. It mistakenly thought that it was a noun, because book is also a noun. It's not really smart. But book an appointment. And notice that it grabs you tomorrow at 4 p.m. as a complete, as part of an item, as a term, right? So in this case, you see that the text is tomorrow at 4 p.m., and the tag is date. Unfortunately, NLP compromise isn't smart enough to figure out things like what sort of data, so it couldn't guess the year, couldn't guess the month and the day. But not to worry, we have another package for it. And you can pass through this called through Chrono Node, and you'll be able to receive tomorrow at 4 p.m., and you'll get the date and the time. And then you can even do more interesting things like figure out the date and the time based on between something to something. So you can say February 23rd to March 2nd, and you'll be able to get two different date and time. So with this, you can complete your doctor's appointment app. And so can do much more complicated things like book an appointment for next Sunday at 4 p.m. So it will tell you, this actually tells you the date. So it figures that next Sunday is actually referring to November 27th, and I use moment to format it with the time zone. Okay, so the next is about responding to the user. And the general rules of thumb is that you need to be succinct, and you need to be friendly, respect the medium, which is in this case, in my previous case was Facebook, and also you need to figure out how to handle the errors if there are any. And try to give the simplest and clearest answers are the best for the user, and that's because the mobile messaging app are typically limited by space, and you wouldn't want to return a whole bunch of text and they had to scroll and scroll to figure out where they have to read. The shorter the bot responses are, the better. And remember that emojis are also valid responses, so if you can use things like you're thinking, use things like a tick, it feels more personal to the user, and at the same time, it saves a lot of space as well. So the next is to be friendly. Use pronouns like I and you. So disclaimer first, this might work for things like Facebook Messenger, it might work for Kik, it might not necessarily work for Slack if you want things to be more formal. And so most of the bots in Facebook, if you try chatting with them, when you say hi, they will say back hi to you. Sometimes they wave back at you. And it's okay to say things like you don't understand the input, or you can say, sorry, I don't understand, and you give them a suggestion of what sort of inputs you can give. And try to use active instead of passive voice. For example, your flight has been booked is not as good as I booked your flight. Because the reason being, chat in Facebook is a lot more personal, so that is the way people talk. And lastly, be humble so that people won't get frustrated. And some of this, humans are smart enough to figure out the parameters it needs to fit to the chatbot interface. And if you try to build something that is entirely conversational, in this case, if you check out some of the apps, you can actually do like really conversational things like say, hi, how do you do? And it's able to respond, fine, thank you. Effectively, you put the bar of your app incredibly high, because now your users are thinking that, wow, this is a really smart app, so I can chat with it. So if you just you manage expectation and you set it to be straightforward, whereby you just give a very structured command, it helps. So it's okay, and respect the medium. So notice what sort of responses there can be. For example, Facebook Messenger supports text, emoji, locations, and buttons. And you can format things using underscore string, and you can get sentences. So try to make sure you use things. Don't make the text too long, and you cannot be able to, the user have to scroll, and that wouldn't be too nice. And if you look at Slack, this is Giphy. And Slack allows you to find different GIFs that you can share on your enterprise chatbot, something that my company, my coworkers and I do a lot, and read the respective documentation to see what sort of things are available. So for Slack, it has this little button where you can click View More, and it will refresh things that are there. And so this does not apply to, say, the Skype user interface, and Skype has something that is similar, but it's not quite the same as this. So next is to respect the medium. Poncho actually has a send location button, so users can tap on it to send their location. And Poncho is a weather-enabled app, so it can tell you every single day whether you need to wear a poncho, whether you need to bring an umbrella and stuff. And for WeBuild.SG, we use generic templates in Facebook Messenger. So in this case, you can see that there are buttons where you can click. And this is entirely only, it's something that is very Facebook specific, and is really trying to exploit the API. And you can use Ranka, which is an app that I wrote. This is a library that I wrote. So what it does is it allows you to write like send tags, and it gives you the ellipses, and you can wait for 3,000 milliseconds to send the next one, and you can do simple things like sending images. There are a lot of libraries out there, and they all differ in the expressivity of the API. And I want to do something like being able to do something like to express what a human could have done. And lastly is to handle errors. We need to make sure that, so always test for the negative scenarios. So more often than not, we always expect that the API that we are connecting to will always give a positive result. Make sure you handle the negative use case as well. So so I'm going to go through like the problems I face when building blocks. Choosing what to build is actually pretty hard. Your business functions can be represented in so many ways after all. And not every part of the business makes sense to develop into a chatbot. And so the next is you are encroaching into personal space such as Facebook Messenger, meaning that their friends are there. The last thing you ever want to do is you chat with them more than their friends chat with them, and they will just delete your app. And if you're more spammy than the other bots, people won't like it too. And if you try to become more conversational, just make sure that they are real human beings. They are also using the messaging app. They are trying to chat with their friends. So if you were to do that, you set the bar very high. And lastly, every chat messaging system is a medium with special characteristics. Hence, they have different APIs. And if you support more than one chat system, you might want to build things like microservices to connect to. And so instead of having one app that just serves Facebook Messenger, you have a Facebook Messenger interface, you have a Kik Messenger interface, Slack interface, and they all connect to a central microservice that is able to figure out the responses that is appropriate. So just to touch on conversational and structured text, for conversational text, it's less predictable and potentially it's more open-ended. And it requires complex rules-based system or machine learning capabilities. So my recommendation is that if you cannot do that, you should not try to do that. There's this app that is really well done called Humany, Jesse's Story. And if you can see the dialogue, it tries to be very conversational. I'm the blue, by the way, I'm not the gray one. And if you can say, hey, Jesse, and it's able to pull off a pretty decent conversation with you. And I realized that it's one of those, it's like a little girl, so I replied back with what I think a little girl would have replied. Okay, so on that note, structured text is more predictable, hence it's with limited functionality, but you get to control a lot more. So we built SG is an example of a structured chatbot. So it's built by me and the We Built SG API. And you can try asking it about upcoming events, and it only tells you that. And it also tells you things like you can check the latest repository, it tells you about podcasts, but if you ask specific things, then it knows what to do. It doesn't do more than just 3 functions, essentially. So lastly, sometimes coding by yourself is not necessarily the right solution. Depending on the scope, sometimes you might find that bot building platforms that does things with machine learning is a much better choice, and you might want to outsource your entire bot building, your entire bot. And so you have bot building services like Octane, API-AI. I notice my phone is vibrating a lot. I think everybody is sending messages to We Build. Okay, key reply and pull string. And if you want to look into machine learning and NLP services, you can check out Louis.ai, which is by Microsoft, I believe, Wheat.ai and API.ai. One of them is bought by Facebook. I can't remember which. Okay, so that's all. Special thanks to Spencer Kelly, who is the author of NLP Compromise. He's been very responsive, and he helped me a lot. Spencer Young, who does key reply, and Junshu and Sayani, both of them tried my bot and gave me a lot of remarks on how well it works and how it didn't. And I put most of my source code online so you can test it out. And that is all. So thank you.